Hello, my name is Ryan Manook. I'm a solutions consultant with Filemaker. Thanks for joining me for today's Idea to iPad webinar, where we'll spend an hour or so turning your submitted ideas into FileMaker solutions for the iOS, and then demonstrate how easy it is to get started tackling some tasks and creating these custom solutions with FileMaker. But first, I'd like to spend the first 3 to 4 minutes on some brief housekeeping notes and chat about the idea that we picked. For the best experience, it is strongly recommended that you participate in this webinar with at least a broadband connection. If you have any problems or require online assistance at any time, please contact Citrix Technical Support at 888-259-8414. Now, throughout today's presentation, you'll have the opportunity to type in and ask questions, so let's talk briefly about how to do that. Just go to the control panel, click on the question section, enter your question, and click send. Now, we'll try to answer as many as time allows at the end of our presentation, but remember, you don't need to wait until then to submit a question. So how does Idea to iPad work? Well, we take the ideas that you submitted when registering, and we create a pool of submissions including previous requests. They're then grouped into high-level categories and tasks, and an idea is chosen from the most popular bucket. So we're only choosing one idea from a pile of submissions, but keep in mind, FileMaker is going to continue holding Idea to iPad events in the future, so if your idea wasn't selected this time, you can just keep submitting them for use as a potential demo. And while your use case may differ, we're still going to be covering some common techniques and features that you can apply to your solution. Now, your requests were similar to the ones you're seeing on your screen right now, but based on the popularity of your submissions, the winning entry is a survey solution. Now, we're constantly getting survey submissions, and really it makes sense. I mean, you want to see your workflow as paperless as possible. And the basis for this submitted idea is a nonprofit team of sociotherapists in Rwanda conducting interviews out in the field and collecting written interview data and paper-based surveys that kind of look like this. Now, you can still capture good data, handwriting notes, and using these forms, but in this paper-heavy workflow, it's going to be difficult to maintain, and we're going to be spending a lot of our time tied up in double entry and ad hoc processes to update data. Now, there's many moving parts to track and different data sets to glean in a solution like this. So given our time frame, we're just going to focus on a few tasks that can immediately impact our workflow. And again, I like to point out that we're going to be using some techniques and framework that you can still apply to your use case at home. Now, before we get started building a solution, let's all assume that we're part of that field team supporting the Rwanda Sociotherapy program. And when we're out in the field, we're conducting group interviews using qualitative indicators just like these. Now, we use these as guidelines, which will also help us analyze, among other things, the success of our project. And while we're out there, we're also conducting health surveys for additional parts of our research. And then compounding things, we're keeping track of audio recordings and transcribed interviews and maybe other media files like images. So we're capturing some really great data, but each set of data kind of exists on its own island right now. And as noted, it's a tedious process to keep track of where everything is, aside from the double entry into a spreadsheet we have to perform when we get back in the office. Now, the boss of this program, let me go ahead and choose a name from our attendees list. Okay, and we'll say that today, Heidi is our boss. Okay, now Heidi is well aware that we're spending way too many wasted cycles on inefficient processes, and it's costing us time and money. And that's when I get called into her office. Heidi knows there has to be a more effective, more efficient way for us to facilitate this process. And she wants the following. Heidi wants a solution that moves us from paper to paperless, that connects related media files with appropriate interviews, that allows us to access and enter data from any location, and can also help us to extract meaning from our data. So that's a pretty full plate, and it's late in the day on Friday. And with the tools and materials I've been given, I know I'm in for a long weekend, but really this project is looking like it could take weeks or months. But that's when I remember FileMaker. And the first thing I want to do is make sure I can create our workflow in a paperless solution. So, I mean, if I still have to incorporate written information and double entry into our workflow, there's really no point moving forward. So I'm going to go ahead and create a brand new database and then use FileMaker's layout mode and tools like the field picker to recreate this paper-based workflow in FileMaker. So let's talk about how we'll do that. Now, when you want to create a database in FileMaker, there's a few different ways you can get started. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and launch my FileMaker Pro Advanced. And up at the top, I'm going to go ahead and select the File menu and New Database. So we're going to create a database just from scratch. And we'll give this a name. We'll call this Survey Solutions Manuk, and we'll save that to the desktop. Okay. And just like that, we have a FileMaker database, and it immediately puts us in what we call layout mode. And layout mode is where we can design the look and feel of our solution. So we can add objects and fields and change the colors and fonts and things like that. Now, what I want to do is actually, I'm going to create a brand new layout, okay? Because we're going to create a layout designed for an iPad, because we're going to be out in the field and we're going to take our solution with us on our iOS devices. So first thing I'm going to do is give this layout a name. So we'll call this Interview Details and make sure this is specified for the iPad. And then we have a few options. You want to build this layout for a dimension of the computer, an iOS device, or maybe you want to build a layout for reports or labels or envelopes. But again, we're going to take this out onto the field on our iOS device. So I'm going to select iPad, iPad mini. This is going to be a straight up form. And then finally, I can choose to build a layout in portrait mode or landscape mode. And I'm going to choose portrait orientation since it's going to be, we're going to have a lot of information with our surveys and things like that. We probably want a little bit more real estate lengthwise. So I'm going to go ahead and click finish. Now, what happened? Well, FileMaker gave us a layout that is designed to the iPad in portrait mode, and it also gave us a theme. Now, there's 61 themes in FileMaker. They're fully customizable, so you can change them however you want. And you'll notice that some of these are marked as touch. So if you can look at Enlighten to Enlighten Touch or Sophisticated to Sophisticated Touch, those touch themes have larger fonts and larger objects like you'd expect on an iOS device. So let's go ahead and we'll stick with the Sophisticated Touch theme. I'm going to go ahead and click OK. All right. Now I want to give my layout a title. So I'm going to add some literal text to the layout. Okay. So we'll call this Interview Details. All right. And let's go ahead and make that a little bit larger. Okay. 36 font should do. Okay. So we have a nice title for our layout. Let's go ahead and personalize this a little bit. We do have a company logo, and I want that to show on every single record. And in order to do so, I'm just going to go ahead and take our company logo and drag and drop that directly onto the layout, just like that easy. Now, what I'm doing is I'm going to go ahead and drag this to the upper right corner and make sure that this image is always going to be on every single record as we scroll through. It now becomes an object or part of the layout just by dragging and dropping that easy. Okay, so we do have a lot of real estate here in the middle of our layout, and there's quite a few workflows that we want to add to this. We probably want to capture some general information about the interviews themselves and also the interviewee. We also want to capture some more information about those qualitative indicators that we have, that kind of guidelines, and for our interviews. We want to jot some notes on that as well. We also want to take that paper-based survey and recreate that in FileMaker here. And then we also want to combine all of those associated media files with the appropriate interviews. So we do have some real estate in here, but that's a lot of workflows to kind of fit into this space. Now, there's a few approaches we could take. I could create multiple layouts and maybe have a button bar or a menu bar up here at the top. And I could click on that. That takes me to the appropriate layout. But I'm actually going to use this tool, which we call a tab control. And it does exactly what it sounds like. It just creates tabs onto your layout. So you can think of it as kind of like stacking folders on your layouts. So let's go ahead and create some tabs on this object. We have details. We have, we'll just call this qualitative guidelines. Okay, for our indicators. We'll have a survey tab, and then we'll have a resources tab. Okay, we'll create that, and we'll make this a full justification and click OK. So scroll back to the top of our layout, and just like we talked about, you can place different objects and different fields on this on each tab, only viewable when you click on the appropriate tab. So it's a great way to kind of take advantage of the space on your layout. Okay, so let's go ahead and we'll start building it out. Given the amount of time we have, I'll probably build out a part of a section for each of the first three tabs, and we'll move forward from there. Okay. Now, we do want to bring some information over onto our layout. Okay. Now, where's information stored in FileMaker? Well, FileMaker stores information in what we call fields. And in FileMaker 13, we have this fantastic tool, the field picker. You can access it right here in the toolbar in layout mode. Okay. This field picker allows you to access your fields and build on some database schema faster than ever directly in this layout mode. So we don't have any fields right now. Again, it's kind of still like that blank slate that FileMaker's given us. So if you want to add a field, it's as simple as clicking this new field button. So I'm going to go ahead and click new field. All right. And the first thing I want to do is I'm going to go ahead and make a primary key or a unique ID for each of my interview records. Okay. I want to make sure that they're always unique. So I'm going to change this type from a text to a number field. And I'm going to go ahead and control click or right click on Windows and select field options. Okay. And in field options, we have the ability to specify every time a record is created, auto enter a serial number. And that can be an alphanumeric number as well if you have your keys set that way. If you're using like an inventory system, for example, that uses alphanumeric keys. So I'm going to tell FileMaker every time a record is created, use a serial number. It's going to increase by 1. Again, just making sure that we're always working with a unique record. Okay. Now, what kind of fields do you want to add? Well, let's start off with the stuff that we'll add to the Details tab. We probably want to grab some information about the interview itself. So we'll add a group field. Okay. We're going to have different type of focus groups we're going to be talking to and interviewing. Okay. So you want to specify that. We also want to capture the session. Okay. We may be talking to people multiple times. So what session we've been working with them. We'll also have the province or kind of like the location of where the interview is being held. And of course, we want to grab who is interviewing the who is leading the interviews as well. Then we'll probably add some information about the interviewee as well. Like I'm just going to add a name field. Certainly, we could have a separate first name and last name field. We'll have a gender field, an age field, and a occupation field as well. Certainly, we could add more fields here to describe the interview itself and the interviewee, but just in again, given the time, we'll just leave it as these. Okay, so now we need to just grab these fields and bring them onto our layout. And how do we do that? Kind of what we've been doing the whole time already is just drag and drop. So I'm going to select a field. I can always use also use the Shift key, for example, to grab a bunch of fields and drag them directly into my layout. Let's bring them out vertically. Okay, so just like that, that easy. We have our fields there. Okay, to show you again here, let's add some labels. We can just drag and drop the fields directly onto the layout, just like that, right under the Details tab. Okay, so we can absolutely bring in more fields, but I kind of want to section these fields off. I want to kind of create a section for the interview and a section for the interviewee, make it look a little bit more like a form would if I was working on a strictly paper. So there's a few options you can take. Again, the best part about building or designing layouts in FileMaker is that you can make them look however you want to look. What I'm going to do is kind of create a section using this rectangle piece. Okay, so I'm going to draw that onto the FileMaker layout. All right. Now it does have this fill that I kind of want to remove. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to launch the inspector tool. I'm going to go to styles. Okay. Or actually, I'm going to go to the Appearance tab, and I'm going to tell FileMaker to give this object no fill. Okay, but I do want a outline of the object. That's going to act as my section. Okay, so I'm going to bring that opacity up from 0 to 100, and we'll say a solid line of 1 point, and I'm going to change the color to a gray. Okay, so there we go. All right. So we're going to add the first group of our fields. All right. Next thing we want to do is kind of make sure we label what the section is going to be. So I'm going to add some literal text to my layout. Okay. And we're just going to call this interview info. All right. Now, one thing you're going to notice right off the bat is that we can see the line behind this interview info field, or not field, text object. Okay, so it doesn't look very clean. So actually what I want to do is I want to make sure that this text object has a fill that matches the background color of this tab control, so that we can kind of hide the line behind the text. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and highlight the tab control, okay? And here's the color that the tab control has. I'm just going to click on that. And I'm just going to go ahead and grab that color and add it onto my color picker, just like that. All right. So I'm going to go back to my text object, and let's go ahead and give that a fill. Right now you can see it has a white background, but we're going to change that to the color that we just created, or that we just took from the tab control. And you can see that it now hides the lines behind it. So just a nice little tip there if you want to create a form that kind of looks similar to that. I'm just going to go ahead and make sure that the text is kind of in the middle of that box we drew. And I'll bring this over just a little bit. All right, there we go. Kind of looks like a form that you see on a piece of paper, right? So now we'll take those fields over onto the layout, okay? And I'm going to go ahead and grab the group and session. We'll bring these out horizontally and have the label over to the left. All right. Group in session. Just bring these over really quickly. Now you're noticing these blue lines that appear, and those are what we call dynamic guides. Okay. Dynamic guides, they just allow you to quickly align your objects and fields. Nothing to turn on or off. It's just there by default. It's very convenient. Okay, so we'll bring the interview over here. Oops. Deselect that field. Okay. And all we're doing right now is just really just building our layouts out. Really simple. Okay. All right, and we have some real estate inside this section, so I'm just going to bring this box up a bit. Okay, so pretty good start. I don't want this white background to appear on this layout. I don't want it to stand out that much. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and select all of these. So I'm clicking and I'm holding down the Shift key. That's for both Mac and Windows. Okay, and in FileMaker 13 we have what we call styles. Okay, so we have default appearances for different objects and different fields for different themes. Okay, you can see for an edit box we have this default look, which is like a white fill and some lines. I'm going to choose minimal edit box, so it removes the fill, it removes the lines, and the fields kind of adopt the background of this tab control object. Okay. You can also make your own custom styles as well and save them for use later on. Now, I do want the bottom line to appear. Okay, right now it is at 0 opacity because we put minimal. Okay, so I'm just going to bring that back. All right, I'm going to change that color to a gray, similar to the tab control. And then I'm going to remove all of the lines except for the bottom of the field. All right, so a lot of changes made. Let's go ahead and save this and take a look at what we've done. Okay, so right now we're going to exit layout mode. I'm going to click on save. All right, we're now in what we call browse mode, which is where we are able to interact with our data. Okay, we're already kind of getting the it's already starting to resemble a really nice form. So let's go ahead and create a new record. We could just type in here. Say a former combatant. This is session 1, Northern Province, so on and so forth, just like that. Okay, let's go back into layout mode. All right. Again, in the interest of time, we'll hold off on building out the interviewee section here. We'll see that in a bit. Let's jump over to our next tab, okay, the Qualitative Guidelines. All right. And let me bring up our file right here, okay? And these qualitative guidelines, We have grouped indicators. It kind of give us progress for different changes in behavior. And again, we can also use them to kind of analyze how we're doing overall with the program in terms of success. So how can we mimic these things that we want to track over into our FileMaker solution? Well, there's a few ways we can approach this. We could create individual fields for each of these indicators. What I'm actually going to do is I'm going to go ahead and create one field and then use what we call a checkbox. And then I'm going to also add another field for notes. So we'll have a notes for each section that we can just add to on the fly. Now we do have these indicators in different groupings that we created. So I'm going to go ahead and kind of steal the same look that we had from the details tab. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and copy that and bring that over to our qualitative guidelines tab. All right. Okay. I think I brought that over too high. Just copy that. Let's bring this over here. There we go. All right. And let's go ahead and we'll change this name to the first group, having an interest in each other. Absolutely things we want to track. Okay, we'll just draw this out a bit. All right. Now you'll notice that the line is still appearing here. When we copied and pasted, what happened is that I guess the stacking was thrown off. Okay, so we just need to go to the inspector, the position tab, and make sure that the text object is pushed to the top, okay, just by clicking on this icon right here, and make sure that it stacks above this rectangle object, and we now have that fill above the line. Okay, so just a nice little tip there, okay, in case you run into that while you build your layouts. Okay, so having interest in each other, okay, now let's go ahead and add some fields. So go back to our field picker, okay, I'm going to bring this down here so we can see this as the field picker is still up. Okay. Okay. There we go. Now, certainly we have a few different groups of these indicators, and we have a bunch of indicators. I could add a few that says, indicator 1, indicator 2, all the way down to like indicator 15, right? But I want to give some kind of context when I'm creating these fields. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and say this is, guide underscore interest. This category is having interest in each other, so we'll just call this interest. And I'm going to say indicator. Okay, that's going to have all my indicators in there. And then I'm going to add another field, guide interest notes. All right. So let's go ahead and bring these over onto the layout. All right. Just, I want to bring these over vertically. Okay. And we don't need this label here. Let's make sure this guy is longer this way. All right, perfect. And we'll shorten this label to notes. All right. And we'll stretch out our field for taking notes for this particular category, just like that. Okay. Now, how do we get the checkboxes that we were talking about? Well, let's go ahead and select this indicator field and go back to the inspector. Okay. Now, in the inspector, if I go to the data tab, you'll see that by default, these text fields are set to an edit box. So that means you can just type into the field or tap into the field and start modifying and entering information. There's a few different, there's other options that you can choose as well. You can choose a drop-down list, a pop-up menu, a checkbox set, radio button set, drop-down calendar. Really great ways to kind of cut down on the amount of data entry your users have to perform. So I'm going to go ahead and choose a checkbox set. And why not a checkbox set instead of a radio button set? Well, the checkbox set allows me to choose multiple options, where a radio button set only allows me to choose one option. So there may be in our discussions or during our observations that people hit multiple indicators. So I want to make sure that I can capture those. So once we set up a control style saying, hey, we want this field to be a checkbox set, we now need to create a value list for the checkboxes. We have to say, okay, well, I want the checkbox to show X amount of values. So I'm going to go ahead and click on this pencil icon. All right, and I'm going to create a brand new value list, and we're just going to call this guide interest to kind of fall in line with our naming conventions for the fields. Now with value lists, you can see that we can also choose values from another field. So we can pull values from like another table, for example, but we're probably not going to have a table specified for these indicators, right? So choosing or hard coding the custom values here is okay. So what I'm going to do is have the first indicator, which is a sincere greeting. Next indicator, understanding each other. And the third indicator, visiting each other. Okay, then I'm going to go ahead and click on OK. And click OK. And you can see that the field now brings up those values in a checkbox setting like so. All right. So let's go ahead and take a look at our changes in browse mode. I'm going to go ahead and exit layout, save. Back to browse mode. Again, this is where we can interact with our data. I'm going to go to our second tab here. And if we're working with or if we're conducting an interview and we notice that this particular individual has shown these particular indicators, we can check them off just like that. We can stop that, or we can, add some notes showing improvement, things like that. All right, let's go back to layout mode. Again, we have given time, we probably don't want to build out the rest of these categories on this layout, but we'll see them in a bit. Let's go over next to the survey tab, okay? And again, out in the field, we have a survey form that looks just like this, right? And we want to kind of create a digital version of this particular form. So what we're going to do is we're just going to use some literal text and some fields to kind of recreate the exact look of this particular form. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and create some literal text. Okay, I'm just going to say one and put in general, would you say your health is, okay? And I'm going to bold that, kind of like what we had. All right. And then we need to create a brand new field. So let's go back to our field picker. All right. And we need to create a field. Again, we want to give some kind of indication of what this particular field is. So, we don't want to just put question 1, question 2A, question 2B, question 3A, question 3B. Certainly you could, but when you look at your database schema and you're making changes, it's always good, again, to have some context of the fields. So I'm going to create a brand new field, and I'm just going to say survey question 1. Okay. Survey question 1, health. There we go. All right, so let's go ahead, and we don't need a label for that. We'll just bring that field over onto our layout like so. Okay, and drag that out. Again, how do we make this a radio button? Okay, we only want one option to be chosen here. Well, kind of like what we just did with the checkbox, we'll go back to Inspector, make sure that our field is selected. Okay, by default, it's Edit Box like we expected. Now let's go ahead and select Radio Button Set, and then we're going to need to choose or create a value list. All right, the values in this guide interest value list don't match, so we'll create a brand new one. And we'll just call this survey question 1 health. Okay. And we'll say excellent, very good, good, fair, poor. All right. Again, it's okay to use hard-coded values here. We're probably not going to have a table that just stores these values. Okay, and they're probably not going to change. If they're going to be more dynamic, it makes sense to have a table, but for these values, they're going to be more static, so it's okay to just kind of hard code them. Okay, so let's go ahead and we'll click OK. We'll click OK on that. Very good, good, fair, poor. In general, health is. All right, and let's do the second one. Okay, we'll just do up to 2A. 2. The following questions are about activities you might do during a typical day. Now, you may be thinking, well, Ryan, why don't you just copy and paste the text here on the PDF over onto the layout? You can, but sometimes you can run into some formatting issues. So a lot of times it may just take less time to just quickly type these out instead of having to reformat everything. That kind of throws off your layout. It would be great if we could just drag this PDF right into FileMaker and have everything be built for us, but it's okay. We can still recreate this survey really quickly using these tools. Okay, does your health now limit you in these activities? If so, how much? All right, we'll bold that as well. All right, let's move this over so we have a little bit more space. Okay, make sure this has some space over here. All right, and then we'll add the question 2A text. Okay, moderate activities such as moving a table, and we'll just put etc. here just in the interest of time. Okay. Now we need a question or a field for the question here. Okay, so again, we're going to go ahead and add a new field from our field picker. We'll call this survey question 2A health limit. All right. And we'll go ahead and drag that over onto our layout. Okay. And just like we did with the question above, we're going to go ahead and turn that into a radio button set. So from the inspector, just like what we've been doing, radio button set, and we're going to need a brand new value list. Okay. And we'll call this question. We'll just call this health limit. All right. Now, value lists can also be used in other value lists, so they're not tied specifically to a field. So yes, limited a lot. Yes, limited a little. No, not limited at all. Yes, limited a lot. Yes, limited a little. No, not limited at all. So let's go ahead and click OK. All right, we have our values there. All right, let's go ahead and save our changes and take a look at the modifications so far. All right, we have our details. We have some nice indicators here. We have the survey, okay, looking pretty close to the paper version, okay, and we can choose in general your fails, say, it's very good. Moderate activities, you say, yes, limited a little, and that's essentially how you would work through that that type of survey within FileMaker. Okay, so what do we do? Well, we created a brand new database and then used FileMaker's layout mode and tools like the field picker to turn the paper-based surveys into digital format. Now, we're already cutting down on the wasted effort of ad hoc processes and double entry, and we're starting to open up more time we can dedicate to productive activities. So I'm feeling really confident that I can prove to Heidi that her first criterion is met, but we still have a few more features and functionality to add. Now, wouldn't it be great if we could capture related media for each survey? I mean, it's not just survey data we're gathering. We have audio recordings and transcripts and images. Can we relate these to each survey? Well, let's use FileMaker's relationships and container and portal features and try it out. So I'm going to go ahead and hide that, close this survey and close this database. I'm actually going to jump into a second database. Again, in the interest of time, I went ahead and created this. And just using the same techniques that we just went over, okay, we added the participant info, okay. Again, just having a square object and doing some light formatting on the fields with the qualitative guidelines. Again, using the same type of techniques. We just added the additional options here. And then we just built out the survey. I think I'm going to jump to this third one here. Here we go. Okay, so we built out into the survey here. All right. So again, just using the same tools of on this particular tab, just fields, radio button sets, value lists, and a literal text to have that question. And again, you can see right next to the survey form, it's a pretty close approximation of what we would be doing. Okay, now really good start there, but again, we have a lot of resources that we want to add and tie into each interview. All right. Now, before we kind of talk about how we would approach it, let's talk about how we actually store media in FileMaker. I'm going to jump back into layout mode, okay, and bring up Field Picker, and I'm going to go ahead and create, we'll just call it a media field, okay. Now I'm going to change this type from a text to a container field, okay, and a container field is what stores your media files. So it could be a movie file, a sound file, PDF, document files. All of that is stored in a container field. Okay, and if you're using a PDF or a movie or a sound file, you can actually make them interactive as well. So if we bring up the inspector, the container field is highlighted. I'm going to go ahead and scroll down to the bottom of the data tab and make this an interactive container field. Okay, so a PDF you could scroll through. All right, a sound file you could you can play, and a movie file you can play as well. You can have automatic playback as well. So let's go ahead and just take a look at the container field. I'm going to go ahead and exit the layout, click on save. Okay, so there's a few different approaches to how we might want to store resources in here. But first, let's talk about the container field. We showed you in the beginning we have a bunch of media files like transcripts and interview audio. And if you want to take I'm sorry, I have to create a new record. If you want to put a media file in a container field, again, it's just back to the good old drag and drop, just like that. And if we take a look at the solution, you can hopefully hear this audio.
In general, would you say your health is excellent, very good, good, fair, or poor? My health is good.
Okay, just like that. So we can store, again, media files. We can store audio recordings of each interview right in this container field. That's really, really valuable. Already starting to solve some of those scattered information problems. But we have this container field listed here, and it may be from interview to interview. It may be dynamic in terms of how many things we want to store, how many media we want to store, and relate to each particular interview, right? So there's a few ways you can approach it. If you know that the limit of the media you're always going to attach is 5 or 6, well, you could create 5 or 6 container fields and fit them on your layout. Okay, but what if you're in a state where an interview, for example, has 2 media files, and then the next interview has 13 media files, an interview after that has 7, an interview after that has 18, right? It's much more dynamic. Well, you don't want to guess how many you may have, how many container fields you may have, and just create 30 container fields, place it on your layout. Your layout's going to get really stretched out. Okay, you don't want 30 tabs on a tab control just to have a bunch of container fields, right? Now there's a much better approach, okay, and it involves using FileMaker's tables and relationships and a tool, what we call a portal tool, okay? So let's talk about how we would set that up. I'm going to go back into layout mode, and I'm actually going to go ahead and close this or delete that container field, all right? I'm going to go to File, Manage, Database, all right? And there's a bunch of different ways you can get to this particular window, but this window is where you can add a schema to your database. You can add additional tables. You can add fields to those tables, and then really the power of FileMaker, you can create relationships to those tables, okay? And what we're going to do is we're actually going to create a brand new table. Let's call it resources. And this is going to kind of act like a repository for all of our media. All right. Now let's go ahead and add some fields. First thing I want to do is kind of like what we did with the interview table. I want to make a unique ID. Okay. It's going to ensure that every single record has a unique number. Okay. So we'll create that. I'm going to go to options and select serial number and click OK. All right. Then I'm going to add a what we call a foreign key number. Okay, this is going to allow me to associate these records with the interview table. All right, and then we want to add a field that's going to actually store the media. We're just going to call that resource. Okay, and again, that's going to be a container because that stores the media. And we probably want a date, right? When did you insert this media into this record? And what we're going to do is kind of like what we did with the serial number where it's an auto enter, we can also auto enter a date when the record is created. So I'm going to click OK. And then finally, we want to have a way to kind of add some notes, right? A way to add some notes and a description of the resource. So we'll go ahead and click create and make sure that's a text field. All right. Then the next step is, creating a relationship between this repository table that we created and that main interview table. All right. Then when you want to create a relationship in FileMaker, it's as simple as finding fields with common values. Okay. And in this scenario, it's pretty straightforward. It's going to be the values in the primary key interview field, the values of the foreign key interview ID field. Okay. And to create a relationship just like that, a drag and drop, just like we've been doing all afternoon. Let me go ahead and show you that again. Okay, I'm just going to click and hold and drag and drop just like that. So what we're telling FileMaker is when the values in these fields equal each other, allow us to share those related records. Or for example, when I have records that have the value 1, allow me to share all those records with the first interview. When I have records of the value 2, allow me to share all those records with the second interview, and so on and so forth. And I'm going to take that a step further by clicking this allow creation of records in this table via this relationship. Okay. It's going to allow me to create new records in the resources table and automatically have them associated with the appropriate interview. So I'm going to click OK. All right. So a lot of talk on relationships. It sounds good, but how do we get that information to show directly onto this layout? Well, in order to show related information, we have what we call a portal. Okay, and just like it sounds like, it's a portal into a table's related records. Okay, so the portal setup window, first thing it asks us is, well, what records do you want to show? Well, show us related records from, the resources table. Okay, so we'll show a vertical scroll bar there. I'm going to make this 3 for now and click OK. And we probably want to add the resource date and description. I'm going to click cancel on that because I also want to show you that in the field picker, you can also choose fields from other tables. So again, this is a really valuable tool that we introduced in FileMaker 13. I'm just going to go ahead and make this a bit larger. Okay. All right. And let's go ahead and we'll add the resource field onto this layout. All right, just like that. We'll add the date field into this portal. Okay, again, using the dynamic guides to help guide me. And then we'll add the description field. All right. Okay, so we can add some notes. All right. Let's go ahead and save these changes and take a look at what we've done in browse mode. So we'll save. Okay, go to the resources tab. All right. We have some media that we want to add into this container field. So I'm going to go ahead and choose this audio file. All right. I'm going to, again, just drag and drop right into that container field. We have the date automatically appearing, and then I can add a note, audio of today's session 1 interview. Okay, just like that. Then we can have here, we'll have a PDF. We can put right in there. All right, so we say transcript of today's session 1 interviews. Okay, so what did we do? Well, we used FileMaker's relationship and portal features to create a repository for related media, and we're well on our way of solving these scattered information issues that have been plaguing us, and we're relating all these files already into one custom solution. Okay, so we're making some really great time, and we should be out of the office well under an hour, but we have a big question ahead of us. So we have this really nice solution, but can I make sure I can provide access to this file out in the field? Well, in order to do so, I'm going to host a solution with FileMaker Server and then connect to it with FileMaker Go. So let's talk about how we'll do that. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and close out of this. Okay, and close this out of this as well. I'm going to bring up my fourth and final file. Okay, and this file is the only difference is that we've just added some dummy data in here. Okay, so can we add some dummy data in there? Okay, we have 228 records. All right. Now, I want to make sure that everyone has access to this file, okay, when they're out in the field. So how do we do that? Well, I'm going to go ahead and click on the share icon, and I'm going to select Upload to FileMaker Server. Okay, now what's FileMaker Server? Well, that's part of the FileMaker software platform. Okay, it's strictly a hosting application, so it runs the services in the background of your machine. Okay, it allows you to kind of manage your own cloud. All right. Right now, I have FileMaker Server installed on my machine. It's running a service in the background, and I just entered my FileMaker Server credentials. So I'm going to go ahead and click Next. All right. And I'm going to select Upload. All right. So we're going to push this file to FileMaker Server, which will subsequently host it for us. So I'm going to click Done. All right. Now, it kind of looks like we're still in that file that we were just working with. But if you look at the top, in parentheses, it says Ryan Minook's FileMaker Server. So it's giving us an indication that we're actually accessing a hosted file. All right. But how do we get this over onto an iPad? I mean, we've been building this for the iOS solution. Well, it's a really good question. In order to show you, I'm going to go ahead and launch this Reflector app. And Reflector allows me to AirPlay the iPad Air that I have in my hands right now. So let me go ahead and do that. Just give me 1 second to connect to my computer. All right. One second here. Here we go. All right. There is my iPad Air, again, that I'm holding in my hands right now. All right. Down at the bottom, you'll see FileMaker Go. So let's go ahead and tap on that. And this is FileMaker Go 13, free to download on the App Store. And up in the upper left corner, you'll see 3 icons. We have Recent, which shows you the recent servers and databases I've accessed. If I tap on Device, this shows all of the database solutions stored locally on this iPad that I have. So if I'm in an area with a bad network connection or no network connection at all, I'm just going to open up one of these local files, make my changes, and gather my information. And then when I'm in an area with a network connection, I can go ahead and shoot these back up to the hosted file. Okay, so we're not lost if we don't have a network connection. And then if I tap on the host icon, this shows me all of the FileMaker applications hosting FileMaker databases on my local area network. And this is where I can also ping an external FileMaker host as well. So let's scroll through this list of local FileMaker hosts. All right. And you'll see kind of towards the middle, Ryan Minook's FileMaker Server. So let's go ahead and tap on that. And there are all of the solutions that we created. All right, or that I'm currently hosting. I'm going to go ahead and tap on that for survey solution copy, the solution that we've been working with, okay? And just like that, there is the solution that we created for FileMaker Go out in the field. All right, looks like our reflector kind of died out on me for a second, so let's go ahead and give me a second to fire that back up. Okay. There we go. Okay, so here's our solution. It looks as close to high fidelity as you can between the desktop to the iOS device. We can make our changes. You can say this is session 2 instead of session 1. You can say this is Eastern instead of Northern Province. All right. The qualitative guidelines, just like we expect. We can give different indicators here. Type in notes showing improvement, things like that. Okay, we have the survey, so we can have discussions with the interviewee and have them enter the information for them, or we could just give them the iPad and have them enter the survey while they're sitting right there. Okay, and And then we have our resources. On the iOS device, if I tap in the container field, I can actually pull images using the iOS's camera directly into the container field, or I can pull audio or photos from my library directly into this container field from the iOS device. So a lot of flexibility there as we have the solution onto the iOS device. Okay, so really that was just two things, right? We just hosted the file with FileMaker server and then connected to the file with FileMaker Go. Really just two steps. I mean, a minute without me talking, and we can access solution, from any location. Okay, so we found a great way to capture and access data, but let's take it a step further. I want to be able to show Heidi that we can use this tool to gain meaning from this data. And to do so, I'm going to use FileMaker's table view along with quick charts and quick reports. So let's talk about how we'll do that. Okay. So we have some really great layouts. Let's go ahead and close out this reflector, okay? And some really great layouts that we created to capture data, but now let's get meaning from our data. Now, one thing I did is I created a brand new layout, okay? I called it report. And remember, when you want to create a layout, it's just back into layout mode, and you go to layout, new layout report, and you get this window, kind of like how we started, okay? I created a new layout based off of a table view, okay? So this is what FileMaker calls table view. It may look familiar because it's just like a spreadsheet, okay? So we have all of the information from our interview table listed here, okay? Kind of like a data dump in a sense right here, all right? But this is a really great place that we can use some quick charts and quick reports to gain meaning out of our information. So for example, we can easily group data. Let's say that I wanted to find how many males and females I was talking to in this program. So what I'm going to do is just hover over a column in table view, okay? I'm going to select add trailing group by gender, okay? And just like that, FileMaker has automatically grouped all of the females and all of the male participants, okay? And it doesn't have to be gender. You know, we could have grouped it by the session. We could have grouped by the province or by the focus groups. But in this scenario, we just did all the females and all the males. And let's take that a step further. Let's say that we wanted to do a count, okay? I don't want to have to manually count these. Let FileMaker do that work for me. Okay, so now I can see that, hey, I talked to 111 females and I talked to 117 males, okay? Well, let's take that a step further. Let's tell FileMaker, I want to know the average age of the people I've been talking to, all right? All right, so just like that, we see, okay, well, we've been talking average age, 31 for female and 31 for male as well. Okay. Now we also want to let's incorporate some of this indicator information that we have. First thing I'm going to do is actually let's go ahead and clear the sort of the gender. All right. I don't want all of the information for the indicator to show. I just want to show which records across all of my interviews where the participant has shown the sincere greeting indicator. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to what we call find mode, okay? This magnifying glass icon, all right? And this is where I can enter different values and perform a search throughout my database, okay? So I'm going to just select sincere greeting. That's why I want to show all the records that have that indicator. So I'm going to go ahead and perform a find, all right? And then I also want to group all this data by the sessions, okay? And then let's add a count as well. I want to kind of get some meaning here. I want to see, okay, are we seeing any type of improvement from sessions to sessions for this particular indicator, all right? And then let's take that a step further, all right? We do have a count here, 21, 13, and 28, all right? I'm going to go ahead and highlight over the session column. We get this little arrow, and I'm going to choose chart by session. All right, and just like that, FileMaker gives us a nice chart. We can show some data points on here. We can give this a title of here it's sincere greeting indicator by sessions. Okay, we could take it a step further by, creating a calculation that gives us the percentages. Okay, maybe we didn't have as many participants in the second session as we did in the first or the third, but for today's demo, just keeping in this conceptual phase is good enough. But this gives us a nice idea how we can quickly grab some meaning of our data here. We can even save this chart as a layout. Okay. So this could kind of be the start of, like a little dashboard views. All right. They even get some nice information, some charting in here. Again, just all based off of those that table view and a few clicks within that particular workflow. Okay, so what do we do here? Really just use FileMaker's quick charts and quick report features in table view, and that really allowed us to glean a lot of meaning from our data. So we're now able to present to Heidi a solution that really helped us move from paper to paperless. It connects all of our related information into one custom solution that we can access from any location, and it allows us to gain meaning from the data that we captured. So for us out in the field, well, our data have become much more efficient. We're focusing on more productive and effective activities. And as for Heidi, well, she's looking at how much further we can maximize our nonprofit budget with the team performing much more efficiently. Okay, so let's go ahead and we'll open this up to some Q&A. We already have a really great queue of questions. Again, as a reminder, you can go to the control panel, click on the questions section, enter your question, and then click on send. And in order to give some of you time who have not entered your question yet, let's go ahead and talk about some really great next steps, okay? FileMaker recently released the FileMaker training series. This is the official training curriculum for FileMaker. All right, so this is a really great way to build up your foundational knowledge of FileMaker. You already have the idea, and this is a really great way to kind of start hammering that idea into FileMaker. There's two options: the basics, which is a basic guide. It's free to download off iTunes, download off FileMaker's website. Again, it's free to download. The advanced, I believe it's $19.99 on iBooks and $39.99 for a hard copy. The FileMaker community, this is a really fantastic resource. If you're interested in FileMaker, or if you're starting off in FileMaker, you absolutely should join. Again, it's free to join. You get to interact with FileMaker's community. You can ask as many questions as you want, start as many conversations as you want. And you also have access to great free resources like the technical briefs, the white papers, the how-to articles. Even when we have our annual DevCon conference, they'll post some videos from that as well from the session. So it's a really great, again, a free resource to kind of help you along the path of building out the solutions that you want to see. In FileMaker Success Pack, this is a really fantastic program that we're running right now. You can purchase FileMaker in two different bundles. We have a FileMaker Pro 4-pack bundle and a FileMaker Pro 9-pack bundle. Not only are you getting the software to kind of start building out your ideas like we were doing today, but you're also getting that FileMaker Training Series Advanced thrown in there as well. So you're kind of saving yourself the cost there. It's a really great book to help you out in your development. Finally, FileMaker Go 13, free to download off of the App Store. If you're going to download FileMaker Go 13, make sure you download FileMaker Pro 13. That allows you to build your databases like you saw today. FileMaker Go is strictly a client. For more FileMaker webinars, go to FileMaker.com/support/webinars. A lot of great free content on there as well. There's other idea to iPads that you can watch. There are a really great webinars about our new WebDirect feature and how to get the most performance out of your database. So a lot of fantastic material up there. And then just visit FileMaker.com/support/training. There's a lot of links for self-paced training and instructor-led training as well if you prefer to go that route. All right, let me go ahead and give me a second to pull up the questions that I have from you guys. Let me just close this out. All right. Just give me 1 second here. All right. The first question. Can I add keywords to the note fields for finding matching records later? Matching record within the field itself, no. But what you can do is you can kind of create a field that can kind of be like, it can be kind of be like your hashtag field, for example. So you could just place, a keyword in there, and then you can kind of, you can do a script off of that, or you can do a search off of that. I mean, if you just do a general search like we did in find mode for just any word, if that word exists in that field, it's going to appear, right? But you can't make it a keyword. But having like that other field is going to make it a lot quicker in terms of indexing what you have out. There's also a quick find feature up at the top in FileMaker, as you can see right up here. Just a really quick way again to do a search, and then I believe you can add you can have recent searches on there, but you can't make anything in the field like a hot keyword. Okay, next question. Can you make it so people using the mobile version can only read or look up data? Yeah, absolutely. I mean, security is always going to be an important part of your solution. So with FileMaker has what we call accounts and privilege sets. Okay, so accounts, who can log into my file, and then privilege sets, what can I do in the file once I'm logged in. Okay, so it's in those privilege sets you can determine down to the very layout, down to the very field, what people can and can't see. And then you can supplement that with some scripting. You can put people in fines for records that that are only appropriate to them, so you don't have to see a bunch of records that just say no access. All right, the next question. Can I use Dropbox to transfer my database to the iPad? You can. There's a few ways you can take your database to the iPad, iTunes, Dropbox. You can email the database to yourself. You can even put it up on a website and download it if you want to get the file over onto the iOS device, so you can have a local copy and work in the areas when you don't have a good network connection. Okay, the next question. I don't have FileMaker Server. Can I get my FileMaker database on the iPad and then sync my changes when I return to my Wi-Fi network? Yeah, so the syncing process itself doesn't require FileMaker Server. And I should preface that by saying, FileMaker doesn't have a native syncing process. There's not like a switch or an enable button in the software that allows you to just automatically transfer that information. Okay, so syncing is going to be handled by a manual import script that you create. Okay, or there's also third-party software out there that kind of handle the scripting for you. Okay, it takes the responsibility of creating that scripts out of your hands. So like 360 Works, Mirror Sync. I forget the developer, but there's another one called Easy Sync and Seed Code's GoZync. Those are three that I can remember off the top of my head, but they can handle the syncing process for you. So, given that FileMaker Server isn't required, you can still have your database at home. It can be hosted by FileMaker Pro, and you can push the changes by accessing that hosted file on FileMaker Pro. But the thing is, if you're going to be pushing syncs outside of a office, outside of home, I mean, even it's still not ideal, but if you're going to be doing it, you absolutely want FileMaker Server, just because you're going to be accessing a solution that's secure, that the data from client to host is going to be encrypted. Okay, if you're trying to access a file that's hosted by FileMaker Pro, it's going to be sent in plain text. If you're waiting to take the file at home and just access it behind the firewall, again, it's still not ideal in the sense that you don't have FileMaker Server, but you can get around that without having FileMaker Server. You just don't want to do, the external access without FileMaker Server in general. Okay, that's all the time we have for today. On behalf of FileMaker, it was an absolute pleasure chatting with you guys, and we hope to see you on another webinar soon.